we're back with Paul Mabray from Vintank in Napa Valley, digital think tank and consultancy for the wine industry. If you missed part one of our conversation, do go back and take a listen to that first, because it really puts our next conversation into context. Paul's got lots of great insights, and we have, he's got a slogan, So Low Mo, and we've talked about the social, low for local, and now we're going to dive into mobile. Mobile apps have just exploded in the wine industry, and Paul and his team have done an excellent analysis each year of the wine mobile apps that are really serving wine consumers in the industry. Are there more than 450 wine apps now, Paul?
There are more than 452 wine apps last year, and you, by the way, just to bring your audience back, you've won 3 years in a row one of our best selections. So don't forget that.
You are a complete plant.
Yeah,
Every bottle of wine will be water.
Water?
Wine will be, yeah.
Wait a second.
Well, that's all you get.
Wine. We negotiate your wine.
No, you do 5 compliments, Paul. Remember, 5.
I got it.
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna lose people. Let's get back to the topic.
Got it.
No, you do a great analysis of mobile apps. I'm a firm believer in them because I think where we make our decisions about wine, we're generally in the liquor store, we're away from home, or we're at a restaurant looking at a wine list. So, I think that's where it's at, mobile and wine. Mm-hmm. And yet, the whole thing about monetizing these apps and so on, it's been a real struggle for developers or wineries or anybody who's creating these apps. They're expensive to make, mm-hmm. and most people want them free or at a very low cost. So what do you think is the future of mobile apps? Are people going to be able to monetize their efforts, or, they're just so valuable that, who's going to keep doing them?
Well, I think there's a couple things. So mobile as a subject in general, I mean, the reality is the iPhone wasn't the first smartphone by any means. And it may not necessarily have been the best, that's arguable. But what it was the first time a mobile phone said, we are not trying to serve our applications here. This is your window to the internet. And even most of the apps that are in the App Store are, a small piece of them here, but most of the information still comes from the internet. And what this is now this is the window to the internet in your pocket.
Right.
And so that being said, it becomes an extension of your use to touch the internet, to touch all these pieces. So whether you're taking a photo and sharing it with your friends, your social networks, Facebook and Instagram, Google, 50% of the searches coming through your mobile phone, that's the trend that's coming from mobile. It's becoming smarter, faster, easier to use this extension of you. And a mobile phone is a very personal object, too. You have to remember it's got pictures of your family on it. It's got your passwords, your banking information, your friends' phone numbers. So it becomes an extension of who you are as a person in some ways. When you talk about wine and the mobile space, people love to develop wine apps. It's a giant category, and fortunately for you and for a lot of people, they're doing a food and wine category in the App Store. I'm sure you saw that. So hopefully I'll get everyone more placement. Yay! The problem with it is that the people who use mobile apps for wine is a smaller percentage, and the ability to monetize them is also very small because the wine industry doesn't really pay for digital. And what I mean about that is, as we become wine lovers, we become myopic to the days when we weren't wine lovers, right? When we were drinking red or white, or drinking Chardonnay or Cabernet, or whatever the variety, we didn't really care that much. We weren't that interested. Just give me a bottle of Chardonnay, and that's the majority of the world. And so, as an example, in our software solution, we measure everyone that talks about wine on social media ever. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, over 300 million conversations, profiled over 10 million wine consumers. Now, most people say I had a great bottle of wine with my wife, or we went out and had wine with the girlfriends, or whatever. That's the majority of conversations. Only 3 million people have said the 3 things that determine that they've moved to the next level, which is they've mentioned a brand, they've mentioned a variety, or they've mentioned a region. That's 3 million out of the 10, so 30% approximately. And then when you go deeper into a product or tasting notes, just talking about the notion of tasting notes, only 250,000, we estimate, have written a tasting note about wine. That's a pretty big cliff, when you look from 10.5 million people to 250,000. So.
Right. And so you're, we're going to sort of jump back and forth here, but you're
okay,
monitoring all of those conversations.
Sorry.
Like you are able to sort of aggregate this data for the wineries and say, listen, it's these 300 people who just mentioned your brand, or
that's correct.
You're feeding that back to them. Okay.
That's what we do. That's our software. And then we say how many times that person has mentioned wine in general. So every time you mention anything about wine, Natalie, we append your Twitter record or your Facebook open profile saying, you've mentioned wine 600 times out of X amount of tweets. It's a lot more for you, obviously.
It's 100%.
Yeah, and here's the wines you've mentioned, and here's your frequency of mentioning Chardonnay versus Cabernet, and here's what brands you've mentioned more than once.
Wow.
Because that's data that you're giving out. That's the cost of free, right? You're putting out information, and people are able to measure it and analyze it and determine more about you.
And so for wineries, like your business, you're probably monitoring conversations from the media or bloggers, but also then just from consumers, so that the wineries can do something with this data, like
everything.
Approach. Okay.
Everything, every single piece, and that's our core business model. So we started as a consultancy firm where we wanted to marry wine and technology, because my former company, I started the first e-commerce company for the wine industry and raised $16 million, and created the first e-commerce platform to help bridge the gap between wineries and customers selling online. That was my mantra. Hey, I'm going to help them, and we're going to work around the commerce piece first. And then this company was about, I have the hubris or insanity to want to fix the wine industry through digital. I believe that we can't ignore it. It is pervasive through our society. It's pervasive on how we interact with the world, whether we want to admit to it or not, whether their age group we are. I mean, you see grandmothers pulling out their iPhones. You see, young kids with iPhones. It's all over. My 5-year-old son is touching my mouse pad way better than I ever would, or playing Connect and using the internet to find his Netflix movies. So I mean, it's amazing in that way.
But how do you convince so many wineries? I mean, you're in the heart of Napa Valley, Silicon Valley, and everybody gets it there. But a lot of wineries around the world just don't. Like, they still are looking at these traditional models. How do you convince them? You can say, look, it's growing. Twitter's so huge. I mean, you should be there. But what's the tipping point that gets very traditionally minded people in the wine industry over and becoming believers in social media?
So well, in digital in general, because I believe in the whole. But we'll even start with the social media piece. I think you're incorrect in thinking the Napa wineries believe it sometimes better than international wineries or wineries in New York or Oregon or Washington or Canada. I think that there is always that adoption curve, right? The early adopters to the laggards. And as an industry, we tend to be a laggard industry. We're still using the Mondavi playbook from the 70s, as I mentioned before, trying to use a distributor. We also are spoiled in California in a way that no other wine industry, which is the majority of U.S. wine, because the tourism base is unprecedented. The world looks at us, So if you look at every major wine region in California except for Mendocino and Lodi, we have a plethora of new customers coming to our valleys, whether it's Sonoma or Napa or Paso or Santa Barbara or Temecula, every weekend. Next to San Francisco and Disneyland, Napa is one of the greatest tourist destinations in California.
Wow.
I think it's 9 million customers a year.
Okay.
That's a lot of people.
And how are you convincing Napa Valley people to take that physical, in-person experience and then translate it? Are you?
Well, I think what happens because of this inordinate amount of tourism is we are so fortunate that we are myopic to the realities of the world, that the second sale or communicating with the customer at home is more important than the hospitality function, which is selling a bottle of wine or a glass of wine across the table. And look, I always say to a winery that if you can't sell them wine in this beautiful place when they've already visited a couple wineries and they have a nice little smile on their face or they're with their fiance, girlfriend, uncle, whatever they're with, you have a bigger problem. And we as an industry are really geared to hospitality in a really great way. I mean, we are the best at hospitality. We are stinky to all stinky degree at the second sale, trying to get them when they go home, trying to understand that piece. And it's because of two things. It's because of that plethora of consumers coming to us every weekend. We have a new pool coming every weekend. And it's also because of we're used to selling in this wacky distribution system. So I won't even go into that clumsiness. But we don't understand to talk to the customer the way that we're supposed to.
And so what has been the tipping point for you? When have you seen traditional wineries go, oh, I get it. Okay, I need to be there?
When the first big sale happens, when the first customer reacts positively, you know, and the way we do it is two ways. We proselytize endlessly, as you see. I mean, I am on the speaking circuit more than I'd like to admit to, and then we also publish content at a high velocity and meaningful content, I think, or I hope, you know, to wineries, to consumers, just getting it out, giving it out for free, making sure that everyone understands. And the second piece is we give our base software away for free, so that when a winery comes on, they're listening to their brand, and once they see that first or second or fifth conversation, a light bulb kind of clicks on. They're like, wow, there may be something to this answering machine that is allowing me to touch my customers. So,
okay, fair enough. And then just circling back a little bit to the mobile apps, where do you see that going in the future for wine mobile apps? Are we going to see a rationalization, a shrinking of the number of apps, or do you see them proliferating?
Well, I think that, you know, everyone's still, it's a passion play, so you're going to still continue to see apps come in. There's going to be a continued myopia about people who think that the app's supposed to work this way because this is the way they think about wine, and forgetting that the meat of the wine industry doesn't think about wine like that. That being said, there's definitely an evolution in wineries' ability or desire to pay for digital, and it's occurring slowly. I always joke that wineries think annually around harvest time, but they definitely are catching up, again, slowly. So the problem is that most of these people don't think of the business model and how they're going to monetize this initially.
Right. And when you say pay for digital, do you mean advertising on other apps or creating their own apps?
Any aspect of digital.
Okay.
How about that? So I'll give you a statistic. Out of 7,500 U.S. wineries, there are less than 50 dedicated e-commerce specialists, meaning that their sole job is to manage the website and create e-commerce. And it is, considering it's the fastest growing channel in our industry, there's a problem there. The second piece is out of 7,500 plus wineries or whatever it is, there's less than 30 social media dedicated managers. So I mean, we're talking, and there's only two vice presidents of digital in the entire industry. So I mean, you can go into other travel, all these other industries, and they have a much more, diverse, resourced perspective than we do. So that's in human resources, and that's anecdotal of what they spend. I guess that's what I say.
Wow. And so, and then back to the e-commerce, you're just seeing, obviously, the trends are growing. Are you seeing that worldwide or just mostly in the U.S. that e-commerce wine sales, online wine sales are growing?
Well, I think it is worldwide for sure. I mean, you've got Naked Wines in the UK, that, but the U.S. is going through its own transformation. Canada, hopefully soon, will be part of that with your new law.
Yes, exactly. Bill C-311. We're
fingers
hoping.
Fingers crossed for, because that access of that barrier is ridiculous. But what you're seeing, though, is the conditioning of the consumer to being willing to buy wine on the internet, and you're seeing the wineries and wine retailers becoming more sophisticated on how to enable that, and how to bring the cost of shipping down, and how to bring the barriers of shipping down, and how to service those customers better and market online. So, and that's actually, to me, it's a result of the recession and flash sales. So during the last couple of years, wineries who were fat and happy had it easy, right? You could sell to a wholesaler and sell your wine. And then when the recession happened, the wholesaler said, I don't need any more wines. We have so many wines, we can't even do it. So these wineries, to sustain themselves, had to refocus and explore new channels. And that included e-commerce and other digital aspects. That's why I think you're seeing growth in digital advertising and digital spend. But they were forced for the first time in history to do something differently, because if they didn't, it meant their end. The flash sales as well were positive. Lot 18, wine still sold out. Had these great deals during the recession to buy wine that were ridiculously rated at ridiculously low prices. And so consumers became safe and comfortable that they could buy wine over the internet and they wouldn't get cooked in the trucks, or it wouldn't get wouldn't take forever, or it was actually really good wine and wasn't broken. So there's a lot of conditioning that's happening on the consumer by the flashlights. Yeah, and even though I think most of them will implode, they did a great service to the wine industry, teaching wine consumers that it's okay to buy wine on the internet.
Absolutely, and to me, I see wine, like books and the success of Amazon, as a long-tail industry, meaning there's I don't know, millions of SKUs, of stock-keeping units. Like, the vintage changes every year. Each winery produces 10 to 20 wines. I mean, to just try to find what you want, it would be far more efficient, I think, to go online after you've read the review from your friend, blogger, one of the few left-standing critics. Go find that wine and get it shipped right to you. To me, that would make the ultimate sense, as opposed to going to the local liquor store. It's the regulations that restrict that, because the reality of it is the wine industry, you say long tail, and the long tail book by, the Wired guy, Chris? Yeah, Chris Anderson. What's his name? Chris Anderson. Brilliant guy. We've talked on email a couple times. There are only 4 super long tail consumer good products, and books, movies, music, and wine. And the first 3 can be delivered digitally. Yeah. Right? Wine's the only physical product. Wine's the only consumable. And what I mean by super long tails is it's just you never see as many wines or as many cell phones or types of cereal or milk, or go on and on and on as wine. Wine is by far but the difference also is not just that the other 3 can be delivered digitally. It's that in the wine industry, it has an inverse correlation in price the more you move down the long tail, right? So what do you mean by that? So Sutter Home is much cheaper than Harlan or Staglin as you go down the long tail. So the price goes inverted as you go farther down the long tail, because the cost of production, you have to inflate your SRP significantly. So it would make more sense for those expensive but rare wines to be online. No question on that piece. And then there's a reason that why wholesalers don't carry them. The cost of carrying inventory is and this is probably getting boring for users, but this is good economics discussion, which is it costs more money to hold the great wines and wait for them to sell in a year than it does for the Sutter Homes, Kendall Jackson, regular stuff, than it does for the Harlans or I won't even say Harlan and Staglin, because those are unusual anomalies because they have such high demand. Okay. But there's thousands of other brands that nobody's ever heard of that take a year to turn over that inventory, and the cost to sit on it is extraordinary. Tying up the cash. Well, let's bring everyone back to us by flashing a bottle here. Look, people, we're going to taste wine. It's actually, we're getting back to the real stuff here. Paul, you've chosen Robert Mondavi Sauvignon Blanc. We have slightly different. I have the private selection. You have which one? No, 2009 Fumé Blanc. Yeah. Okay, so Fumé Blanc is Mondavi. Did he not come up with that name for Sauvignon Blanc? He did come up with that name for Sauvignon Blanc, yeah. Okay, and it comes from Fumé. Right, and the foggy conditions and so on. So why did you choose this? I mean, I think all wines are social. But why this one? You know what? 2 reasons. Robert Mondavi is without question the greatest change agent we've seen in modern history for wine. Mm-hmm. He changed not only the California wine industry, but all new worlds, presenting the fact that we could compete with the old world. And now wine, no matter where you find in the world, there's great wine to be found. In fact, I asked online, and Aldo Yarrow from Vinography mentioned a wine from Ecuador. I didn't even know they made wine in Ecuador. Wow. And it's in the presentation that you're talking about. That's the wine. So my point is you can find great wines from everywhere. But what I love about Robert Mondavi is he also nurtured in almost all new world wineries this culture of sharing. He was the first one to come in and say, I'm trying this rootstock, I'm trying this barrel, I'm trying this stemmer. It doesn't work, it does work, it's great. And he shared that information, whereas in Europe, their secret recipe for wine, he's like, here's my yeast, here's my everything. And it continues to this day, which is you can call your competitor and say, my wholesaler in New York is horrible, who should I go with? And they will tell you a wholesaler that's done a good job for them, essentially enabling their competitor. Yeah, so I guess it's a mindset that the rising tide lifts all the boats instead of trying to torpedo all of the rest of them out on I agree, and for that he deserves all recognition. And we model ourselves after that to share all the information all the research and reports. That's what we do, and it's our homage to Robert Mondavi. And the other piece that I chose is,
you know what? For a fairly well-produced wine with a large production, this Fumé Blanc from 2009 is an awesome price point, awesome drink, and never is a bad selection. So
yeah, absolutely. I got to agree. Yeah, yours is up here in Canada about $23. The one I've got is about $16, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, I've tasted it before.
It does a great job.
For the price point. Yeah. Okay, we're thirsty. Are you already ahead? Like the cooking shows, you've already poured.
Yeah, I've been sneaking a little under the table, you know. It's these interviews are.
You are 3 hours ahead of me, or behind me. You're still on lunch.
It's 2 o'clock.
It's GAFA. Yeah. All right.
Cheers. Now.
Cheers. Well, and do let me know. Kind of. We won't make this a technical tasting, but I always love to get your impressions of what you get from this wine. Oh wow, that's really refreshing, eh?
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, it's a great lunchtime wine, and right now the fog just burned off in Napa Valley. The sun's out. You know what I get from this wine is I get a smile thinking about what an amazing day it is, and how lucky we are to be in this time. It's so.
Wow.
Well, while people try to dissect the taste profiles, it's about enjoying a good conversation with a friend. It's about enjoying. Great days and really living the life and enjoying life and art and wine, as Robert Mondavi said. So
I'll drink to that, Paul. Wow, let's just end on that. Let's not go any further. Cheers, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Nellie. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
You too.